I'm Brian Jackson. Welcome to In Focus. My guest is Superintendent of the Urbana School District, Don Owen. Welcome to the program, Don.
Thank you, Brian. It's an honor to be here.
Today, I'm going to lead off with this question. How and why was this facilities committee determined, and why at this time was it determined to start with this now instead of before?
Yep. So our district has a history of every 10 years pulling together a facilities planning committee to make a plan for about 10 years. And so it was actually 9 years ago that the last facilities committee came together and they mapped out a plan. And so it was just coming up to a point where we had some big questions that we had to ask. We wanted to pull together a community-based committee of stakeholders to help us answer those questions and make recommendations to the board. And so it's just kind of a 10-year cycle right now.
When is this report basically due, and does it just...
Yeah, the facilities committee made their initial report to the board at the April study session. And the board had some good questions then. The board's been looking over the report for the last month, and at the May business meeting, which is May, I want to say 18th, I need to go look at a calendar, but it's the third Tuesday in May, the board will have it up for more discussion, as well as voting to accept or send the committee's report back to the committee for further research and details.
How was it determined for what each elementary school needs?
Yep. So two pieces of information. One was our last facilities committee report and actually it predates that one even. It goes back 2 facilities committee reports ago, where the board at that time committed that each elementary school have a separate gym and multi-purpose room so that there's more flexibility for PE space and lunchroom activities, as well as a larger space for large group activities. And the second thing was 3 dedicated fine arts classrooms, because our community and our board strongly believes in the arts, and we start at the elementary school with a very strong elementary fine arts curriculum. And so those are the 2 big pieces. And then the third piece was central air conditioning. Now, over the last almost 15 years, because we started with Leal, we have put in a multi-purpose room, we've put in central air conditioning, and to the best of our ability, we'll put in dedicated fine arts classrooms. And so that is a piece that we're continuing. Right now, we're up to Yankee Ridge, and while the facilities committee was meeting, they were actually making recommendations about Yankee Ridge's plans to the board during the process of meeting, and the board was using that information to help make some of their decisions and some of their votes about Yankee Ridge. And so we have 2 more buildings after Yankee Ridge. We have Thomas Paine and Wiley. The facilities committee made strong recommendations that we finish those 2 buildings, bring them up to speed. A big part of the timeline here is available funds. And so we have to be very cognizant of making sure that we have available funds to do the projects. And we've done this without putting additional tax burden on our local property taxpayers as best of our ability. And so it has taken us longer to get through the elementary buildings, but it also has made it so that we haven't put an undue tax burden on our local property taxpayers to get this facilities work done.
Don, what about the other 3 elementary schools? What's the target for them? You had mentioned the first 3. What about the other 3?
So Yankee Ridge, the board actually approved in April, and I'll hold this up as my little my little prop and let the camera get focused on this. Yankee Ridge has been approved to move forward and will start this summer. And so there's actually, the day after school gets out, classroom teachers are packing up their classrooms, and some of the work will get started as early as the first week of June in terms of moving classrooms, getting some groundbreaking started, and Yankee Ridge is getting a whole new makeover on the, I want to say, the northwest side, which is the corner there of Mumford and Anderson. Mm-hmm. And that's where the new gym is going. There's going to be new classrooms on that side. We're creating new entrances and new parent and bus drop-offs and parking. And so Yankee Ridge is starting right away. After that, it will be a couple of years before we can get to Thomas Paine and a couple of years before we can get to Wiley. And the board hasn't even decided on the order of those two. So I just said them in alphabetical order, but the board might choose something different in terms of the order of Wiley and Thomas Paine.
So hopefully, Don, that the elementary things, hopefully, would you say maybe 10 to 12 years?
Yes, that's a good target. That's a very good target, and I'm confident that we could do it in that time frame. And the Facilities Committee also had some other recommendations related to the high school, middle school campus. One of those recommendations is to come up with a campus site plan study, because we now own all but 2 of the houses on that block north of Urbana High School, the block that is between Iowa and Washington and Race and what is essentially Broadway, which is the parking lot of the high school. We own all but 2 of the houses, and we don't own the apartment building or the old corner grocery store there that's now a pottery studio for the CU Potters Club, and it's also a small church. But we want a really clear plan of what we can do to improve the campus, improve the traffic flow, and make sure that we're maximizing educational use of that space as we move forward.
I guess there's no time frame to get that done.
Well, actually, the time frame, the board is actually very interested in hiring someone, and actually would put this out as a request for proposals, hiring someone to do that work and start that plan as early as next year. Now, the result of that plan would probably be based on the available funds that we'd have in addition to working on the elementary schools. And so the exciting part is coming up with the plan as early as next year, and then we'll take a look at what are the results of that plan, how much is it going to cost us, and when will we have available funds to implement that plan.
The district office and the adult education building.
Yes.
Do you have any idea, any sites that are being looked at for those places?
We've actually explored several sites, and I really don't want to talk about specific sites because we haven't had a real serious discussion with the board. But the administration is constantly looking at available sites just to kind of gather information to present to the board at a later date. The Facilities Committee did make a very strong recommendation that one of the things that we need to do is look at selling the current property and using the proceeds of that sale to find a new location for both adult education and the district office. Because the building that we're currently in, we own, but it is not suitable for the space and parking requirements for the district office, and it's definitely not suitable for the space and parking requirements and accessibility requirements of the adult education program. And so the board has, well, let me put it this way, the Facilities Committee made a strong recommendation to the board that the administration should move that up on the priority list, and yet we're going to do that without interfering with the funding sources for the school buildings, Thomas Paine, Wiley, Yankee Ridge, and the high school, middle school. We're going to use the proceeds from the sale of our current building to find a solution for adult ed and the district office.
Don, are there any plans to air condition any of the 2 remaining elementary schools that are not air conditioned?
So both Thomas Paine and Wiley have room air conditioners in every classroom, and the gymnasiums both have room air conditioners. The challenge that we have is without doing a comprehensive renovation of either of those buildings, it would be very hard to put in central air conditioning when you're not doing the other renovation pieces that come along that we want to do, the addition of the gym or the additional classrooms, because you don't want to put in a system that is too small or put it on a roof that is going to get replaced if we're going to be adding a gym and we don't know where we're adding the gym.
Do you see a time frame of air conditioning being added, or would that go with maybe with the renovations?
It would definitely go with the renovations. So it would be on that same time frame as the renovations. But as I said, all of our classrooms, all of our elementary classrooms are air conditioned with window units, and our gyms, both of all of our elementary gyms that don't have central air are air conditioned with room units there. So the buildings are air conditioned, but they're just not efficient because it's not a central air conditioning unit.
Are there any plans to build, at this time, to build a new elementary school in Urbana? There's been talk about it. Are there any plans to build a new elementary school, and are there any sites being considered?
Yep, that's a great question, because that's the other piece of the Facilities Committee recommendation, is that the Facilities Committee is recommending to the board that they explore site feasibility study for purchasing land for the future building of an elementary school north of I-74. There are two steps to that process, and one is working with the city and the Regional Planning Commission to come up with a demographic study to look at the population increases and where the predictions of where populations will be. That's the first piece, and then the second piece is actually hiring a consultant to do a feasibility study of different sites where there's enough land to do that. Obviously, an elementary school, an ideal size for an elementary school is between 9 and 12 acres of land. And so north of I-74, there are a number of sites that are between 9 and 12 acres of land that are currently being used for farmland. But we have not contacted any owners, and we haven't done that, because that would be something that would happen after we do the demographic report and after we do the feasibility study. But those are also things that when the Facilities Committee presented to the board in April, those were things that the board was talking about starting those things as early as next year too. But that doesn't mean that we're going to be out purchasing land next year. It means that we're going to be doing a feasibility study next year and possibly purchasing land the year after that. It doesn't mean we're building an elementary school anytime soon. It means that we're looking at a long range. That's actually probably between 10 and 20 years out that we'd be looking at building a new school. Our population has been growing slowly. One of the things that the Facilities Committee talked at length about was the Think Urbana program, which is the enterprise zone tax rebates for building new houses, as well as property tax rebates that the local government agencies have incentivized for construction and economic development. And there was a lot of positive discussion about what the enterprise zone and the Think Urbana move has done for new construction in Urbana already in its first year. And that's a program that lasts 20 years. And so, you know, the people on the Facilities Committee were very excited about the potential of Think Urbana increasing the population of Urbana, and then also that would mean potentially increasing the population of students attending Urbana School District 116.
It sure looks to me, Don, that the Urbana School District in the next 15 to 20 years is really going to be I mean, it's really going to be changing and in a lot of different ways, and it's going to be, it looks like it's going to be growing.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, and you know, even if it's in the long term, we always are doing things to our facilities to make them, you know, better educational learning environments, more accessible to our students in our community, and just to beautify the space that they sit on. And so whether you're talking about Yankee Ridge and these big plans, or whether you're talking about you know, smaller improvements to the other buildings, you're going to be seeing a lot of positive things happening in the facilities and schools in Urbana.
So hopefully all these recommendations would be completed within the next year or two?
Well, the recommendations would at least, the board, if they accept the recommendations of the Facilities Committee report, my guess is the board would then make a timeline for addressing each of those recommendations. And so, yeah, that timeline would start as soon as the board, you know, approves the recommendations. We might be discussing that as early as June or maybe the August meeting in terms of what's their timeline for addressing the recommendations of the Facilities Committee. Would
this go to the voters, or would it go to or just within the school district?
Well, ultimately, the Facilities Committee plan and those recommendations, that stays within the school district and is under the purview of the school board. But ultimately, if we do get to a point at some point in the future where we build a new school, that's something that is required to go out to the voters for a referendum. The school district has the authority to purchase land, but they can't build a new school without going to the voters for a referendum.
But you don't see that right now in the near future?
No, I don't see that for the next 8 to 10 years at the earliest, because that's just, the other priorities will be addressed first. And so, you know, we have a lot of questions to answer before we make the decision about, one, purchasing land, or two, you know, actually moving to 7 elementary schools in Urbana.
One school would not have to close, it would just probably be added.
Yeah, the recommendation of the Facilities Committee wasn't closing a school at all. It was talking about adding a 7th elementary school.
Okay, so it would not have to do how the state budget is, it would just have to do with what the school budget is
Right.
That right?
Yeah, essentially, I mean, we're all reliant on the state budget. However, that's probably a topic for a whole nother show about where we are with the state budget. But yeah, for the most part, I would agree with your assessment that the things that we've been talking about, well, yes, if the school is not getting any money from the state ever, we'd be looking at a different set of plans. But we don't have any
right.
concerns about moving forward with these recommendations from the Facilities Committee.
Any closing thoughts, Don?
No, I really appreciate the questions. They're very good questions, and I look forward to coming back sometime and talking about some of the things that our students are doing and what's going on in the classrooms in terms of education, because that's what we're here about. We build the facilities, and then the excitement is what happens inside. So again, Brian, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to the next time.
My guest is, thank you, Don, for being on the program.
You're welcome.
My guest has been Don Owen, Superintendent of the Urbana School District. I'm Brian Jackson, and this has been In Focus.